To say welcome, everyone, to our first MTSU Alumni Lunchtime Learning webinar of 2025. I'm Rachel Helms. I am one of the assistant directors here at MTSU Alumni Relations. I am so glad you could join us today over your lunch hour. Our topic today is Exercise is Medicine, brought to us by Dr. Peter Grandjean, who is the new Dean of the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences here at MTSU. I have had the pleasure of working with Dean Grandjean since he started here in July, and let me tell you, you are all in for a treat today. I cannot wait to hear his presentation. But at first, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do for us as an MTSU alum. You are a vital part of this university and to our community. The Alumni Association is always looking for ways to connect you with MTSU. It being a new year, we have tons of new events and programming, many of them free. So please take some time to go to mtalumni.com and look through our offerings. Just some housekeeping things before we get started. You are all on mute right now, but we will be saving some time for questions and answers towards the end of the presentation. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat during the talk. I'll make sure to monitor those and select questions for Dean Grandjean. And once we are in the question and answer part, I'll unmute you all so you can clarify a question or add to the discussion. If for some reason we don't get to all the questions, don't worry. I'll make sure we can field questions to Dean Grandjean via email after the fact. And without further ado, then let me introduce you to our speaker. Peter Grandjean began serving as Dean of the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences at Middle Tennessee State University in 2024. He received his BA at Anderson University in Indiana, an MS at Texas Christian University, and Ph.D. at Texas A&M. Dr. Grandjean joined MTSU after career stops at Auburn University as Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies at Baylor University and as Dean of the School of Applied Sciences at the University of Mississippi. He is an internationally recognized professor and researcher in the areas of lipid metabolism, transport, and vascular physiology. His research is aimed at determining acute responses and chronic adaptations to exercise in those with cardiometabolic disease. Dr. Grandjean has more than 30 years of experience in education. He has authored or co-authored over 200 peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, and conference proceedings, delivered as many invited presentations, symposia, and tutorials, and secured several $1 million in external grant and contract funding. Grandjean is a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine and a member of the American Physiological Society and the National Strength and Conditioning Association. As Dean of the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences, Dr. Grandjean oversees the second largest college at MTSU. The college seeks to improve the health and well-being of people and communities across Middle Tennessee and the region. Welcome, Dr. Grandjean.
Thank you, Rachel. Golly, that was a nice introduction. Very, very gracious. And welcome everybody to a bright, sunny Tuesday afternoon towards the end of January. It's amazing how fast January just flew by. I just want to thank you all for being here, and I want to start by just giving you a brief outline of what we're going to be talking about today. First, I'm going to just provide a very brief history of the movement that we know today as exercise is medicine. I'll talk a little bit about what we call the pharmacology of exercise, if you will, about some of the health benefits and how much exercise or physical activity it might take to enjoy some of those benefits. And then a quick look at how we might dose exercise or how we might prescribe exercise. And then we'll provide a few take-home points and hopefully we'll have some time for some question and answers. Today, I'll focus mainly on some of the health benefits of physical activity and exercise, but of course, some of you may be interested in this topic simply because you want to improve fitness in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm very willing to talk with you more about that at a later time if you'd like. So this movement today largely spearheaded by physicians and scientists at the American College of Sports Medicine, called Exercise is Medicine. It's really a movement. It's with the intention of having healthcare providers include exercise and physical activity as part of their physical examinations and physical assessments. In fact, this exercise is medicine movement was launched officially in 2007, and part of it is to recognize exercise as a vital sign during physical examinations or interactions with patients. So imagine that you think about exercise and physical activity being part of our own health record, like blood pressure or body weight and height, maybe our heart function. So it's a pretty powerful movement, and there's a lot of merit behind this movement. Physicians and other healthcare providers are critical too to getting more people more active more of the time. We trust our physicians, we trust our healthcare providers, and so conversations around physical activity and exercise and advocating for that are part of this movement. In fact, my goodness, skip verification. I'm sorry. In advancing the slides, you got to forgive me there. In fact, the movement of exercise as medicine is very powerful and very serious, and that we know that exercise and physical activity provide such an array of health benefits, and it's so powerful in doing that actually not prescribing exercise for some of these experts means that they view it as not treating the patient fully and could qualify as malpractice. So it's extremely serious. And let me show you some evidence, or let me talk about some evidence that might lend to this. Before we do that, let me give you a little background, or a brief background. A lot of times we think that we've discovered something new, or that we're onto something new, or a new or innovative way of approaching things like exercise in the delivery of medicine. But really, this movement is, enmeshed in history. So Shruta, which was an ancient physician in India, was the first recorded physician to prescribe modern daily exercise. And then Hippocrates was the first recorded physician to actually provide written prescription for some of his patients. Plato was quoted as saying that the lack of physical activity destroys the condition of human beings, and movement and methodical physical exercise save it and preserve it. Galen, which is a Greek physician, recommended combined exercise, and when we say regularly combined exercise with diet and medicine, and his shrewd observation is part of his recommendations for managing diseases. More recently, Sir Edward Stanley, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, recognized that if you don't have time to do exercise or physical activity, sooner or later you're going to find time for illness. And not to be outdone by our English counterparts, Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, knew that walking was a very good exercise and recommended that we habituate ourselves to it. Carol Welch, as part of the 2000 United Nations Millennium Campaign, felt that movement is a medicine for creating change. So it was part of the overall strategy, worldwide strategy, to improve physical health and well-being of our populations. And then Dr. Kenneth Cooper, I distinctly remember him. I'm an old guy, so I remember him in the late 60s, early 70s as an Air Force physician. And he actually came up with the term aerobics. In fact, our modern jogging movement, if you will, you see people running around on the streets, and the new kinds of sneakers and shoes and all the exercise equipment really can be largely attributed to his vision for physical activity and exercise. In fact, what he was saying was that You don't have to do a whole lot to enjoy a tremendous amount of benefit. And the reason why he exercises is for the quality of life. Dr. Cooper is still around here. He's 93 years old and enjoying really good health. So we know when we say health benefits, what are we talking about? In general, we're talking about a reduction in cardiovascular disease and metabolic disease risk. There's a tremendous array of health benefits, too numerous to go into here, but mainly lowering blood pressure, improving blood glucose and our insulin needs if we need those, increasing good cholesterol, if we will, and lowering triglycerides and addressing blood, what we call blood lipids, improved immune system function, of course, changing our body composition, but there's also a wealth of knowledge that's growing around mental health and improved mental health, reduced anxiety and depression, enhanced feelings of well-being, and even physical function at work. So reducing absenteeism, increasing presenteeism at work, and then just work function, ability to do activities of daily living and daily work with vigor. Modern science, and there are just literally thousands of research manuscripts and papers that describe the molecular basis and the biological basis for why exercise influences and has a positive influence on much of our health, much like we know with pharmacology. In fact, from an epidemiological perspective, there is a strong cause and effect relationship. In other words, we know that physical activity and exercise has a causal effect on and positive benefits on our health. There's first of all, there's temporal sequencing. The behavior predates these results, right? There's a consistency in that we find these benefits across different populations at different age groups and different places across the planet. There is a dose-response relationship, and that means for every increment of exercise or type of exercise, there is a certain response that's elicited. There's also a strength of association. Physical activity and exercise have as powerful an influence on our health as even smoking or cholesterol lipid lowering or even blood sugar regulation. And then, as you can see in this picture, kind of illustrates the biological plausibility. There's so many molecular and intracellular and physiologic mechanisms that we've identified by which exercise influences our health. So let's take a look at this concept of exercise is medicine, and let's look at one of the very first and most obvious reasons why medicine is taken. It's usually taken for a very specific reason, and it's prescribed for a very specific reason. And certainly there are some forms of medications or medicines that are prophylactic. They just have a general benefit. You can think of maybe aspirin, if you will, as being able to reduce inflammation, reduce pain, but also have effect on our cardiovascular system, cardiovascular health, reducing heart attacks and strokes. So aspirin might be one of those. If we think of exercise in that physical activity in the same fashion, let's look at this graphic for just a minute. On this horizontal axis, we have physical, the amount or the intensity, if you will, both of physical activity or exercise. And then on this vertical axis, we have the health and fitness benefits. Just theoretical benefits, could be blood pressure, blood sugar, you name it. And if you look at the shape of this curve, what this suggests is those individuals who are doing very little or low amounts of physical activity or not participating in exercise at all, by doing just a little bit, enjoy a tremendous increase in these health benefits or fitness benefits, right? Mainly health benefits, and that's what we're talking about right now. If you do a little bit more, you enjoy greater benefits, and even more greater benefits. So you get the point. There's this curvilinear relationship where By doing just a little bit, you enjoy tremendous health benefits, and doing a little bit more, you enjoy more health benefits. Okay. There's another curve though, and these health benefits that we're talking about may have nothing to do with our overall physical fitness, our ability to carry out activities of daily living. And many of us think of fitness like cardiovascular fitness, our ability to run far or fast, or cycle far or fast, or swim, or you name it. These health benefits accrue at a low level where you might not accrue any fitness benefits whatsoever. And indeed, it might take a higher intensity or more physical activity or exercise, or even more specific physical activity or exercise to start to see or observe these fitness benefits. But much like the health benefits, by doing more or doing it more intensely or more specifically, you can increase or improve health and fitness benefits. So if you think about this concept of exercise as medicine, there is exercise that and physical activity that may be taken for overall health benefits. But if it's done for specific reasons, or it's done for those health benefits, then the amount of exercise makes a difference, the dose and then a response. What also becomes apparent is that we acclimate to that dose of exercise or physical activity so that we adapt, our bodies adapt. We become more accustomed to what we were doing before. And so the amount of exercise that we're ordinarily doing doesn't really elicit the same response. We're going to have to do more, or we're going to have to do it differently. We're going to have to change the exercise, or we're going to have to add some other forms of exercise in order to enjoy or continue to improve or enjoy those health benefits. And this is consistent, this theoretical dose response curve is consistent with some of the recommendations, major position statements and recommendations that we've seen over the years. And literally since the 1970s to this point right now, and there are several happening every year, there are position statements that recognize additional health benefits of physical activity and exercise. So at the lower levels, heart rate and blood pressure, blood glucose, and those kinds of things can be improved. We have to do a little bit more to enjoy additional benefits, like maybe changes in body composition or improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness. And then we have to even do more if we're talking about trying to address weight loss or weight maintenance or even our bone health. So this dose response curve fits this concept of exercise having medicinal purpose or medicinal benefits. What I want you to remember, and most of the research that I've ever been involved with really has looked at this dose and response, because many people think that you have to do exercise or physical activity on a regular basis, and you have to do it for a long period of time before you can see health benefits. And that's just simply not true. If you haven't done anything, and today you get up and walk for 5 minutes, you're going to enjoy some benefits that in health. It might be improved blood pressure. It might be a reduction in anxiety. It might be just feeling better about yourself. But a single session of exercise will address most of our cardiometabolic risk factors. That's talking about blood pressure, blood sugar control, and blood flow regulation to our organs and tissues. This is very important concept to remember. You don't have to do much in order to enjoy those benefits, and the benefits are immediate. In fact, the benefits are immediate, but they wear off, much like medicine. You take medicine for a certain reason, it has an effect, it has a duration of action, and then that effect wears off. The same thing with exercise. So you must do this on a repeated basis in order to enjoy those same benefits. So regularly practice exercise and physical activity can improve a lot of these factors that contribute to what we call metabolic syndrome, this clustering that we see in a lot of our middle-aged and older individuals, particularly in the United States, but the Western world, right? We see an accumulation of body fat. We see high blood pressure. We see insulin resistance. We see blood sugar problems and control. We see dyslipidemia. Those are all things that we are all struggling to control as we get a little older. And so physical activity and exercise can impart tremendous benefits in the absence of weight change. We're focused a lot on weight maintenance or staving off weight gain. And we all know we're fighting a losing battle. We know now that almost 80% of our population is overweight or obese. But even if you're overweight, you can enjoy these instant health benefits of physical activity and exercise. So let's take a look at some of these cardiometabolic disease risk factors and the reduction with physical activity and exercise. Just one session of exercise and repeated lower doses of exercise can lower blood pressure quite significantly by 6 to 10 points, depending upon our measurements. It can improve insulin sensitivity and beta cell function of the pancreas, believe it or not. There are reductions in blood glucose. A marker of long-term blood glucose control are HbA1cs. Fasting insulin levels can be lowered, and it can increase some of these biological signaling molecules in our body that control appetite as well as overall cardiovascular health. It can improve blood lipids and what we call dyslipidemia or abnormal lipid levels. It can right some of those. Most importantly, we know that a lot of our health conditions start with inflammation and oxidative stress and poor blood flow to our organs and tissues. And certainly a single session of exercise can improve that. And done regularly and at enough dosages, it can even change or alter our body composition. So exercise is very powerful as many medicines at improving our health. But I want to warn you also that doing too much too soon or doing too much for our own physical condition can cause a risk of injury, repeated use injuries like shin splints or bad knees or elbows or hips. It can also cause cardiovascular complications. So it's important that we have appropriate goals and prescribe exercise, much like medication, on a very tempered basis. So how do we prescribe exercise? Well, much like a physician might prescribe medication. We take it for specific reasons. There's a certain amount that we take that we're hoping will have a specific response, that we adapt to that medication over time. So we need to monitor that and vary either the dose or the types of medication or maybe combine medications in order to enjoy the same benefits. There's this principle of individuality, and that is that we all don't respond to the same dose of exercise the same. And moreover, within our own bodies, we change or we adapt. So we have to pay attention to that. And that you don't always have to do more. You know, if you've reached your goals and you're trying to maintain your health and fitness, then we can do some of the same things over and over again and enjoy constant or static health benefits. And then there's a principle that if you don't do the activity in a repeated basis, that we will revert back to poor health. And so there's this principle of reversibility. So kind of explored this concept of exercise and on a basic level. I know that there's probably some questions out there about what types of exercise should I do or what are the benefits of certain types of exercise. And so what I'd like to do is just share with you briefly, give you a bird's eye view of some of these things that we've recently rediscovered, like high intensity interval training. That seems to be a hot topic, and we have various ways of doing high intensity interval training. And believe me, just the concept is a vast territory. But let me give you the overarching concept, and then you can kind of consider how this might be beneficial to you. So what we typically do with any kind of physical activity or exercise is we generally think of a brief warm up to get blood flowing to the muscles and get us mentally prepared for the physical activity or exercise we're about to do, and then we start and we do we get up to what I call warp speed, and we do this for a constant. We're in a constant gear, and we do this for a certain amount of time, and we finish our exercise, and then we cool down and maybe do a little uh, flexibility or stretching, and then we cool down and go home. High intensity interval training has done so many different ways, and we've known that it benefits many of our athletes, but it really has a lot of health benefits too. And this is what we're talking about with high intensity interval training. Instead of doing this constant exercise, we're talking about warming up and then doing a higher intensity interval, much higher than we would if we were doing constant moderate intensity. And we do this for a short or brief amount of time, and it's followed by a rest interval. And that rest interval might be active. So you might be, for instance, you might jog a little bit and then you walk. And then you jog a little bit and you walk. And these efforts can last, if it's very high intensity, very short, a few seconds, to maybe several minutes if you're doing something like jogging, like I was describing. And these intervals can last in what we call work rest intervals of 1-to-2 ratios, or 1-to-5, 1-to-8, whatever you want. But 1-to-2 would be you jog for 1 minute and you walk for 2 minutes, right? Or you do something a little more intensely and you need a little bit longer to recover, so it might be 1-to-5. And you repeat these different intervals, right, several times in a single workout, and then you cool down. So these have become very popular types of workouts to do. One, it helps in transition. Remember, we said we adapt to our exercise. So if you're trying to do a little more intense exercise, this is a way to transition from a lower intensity to a higher intensity exercise. It might be that you want to focus on high intensity interval training just by itself, because some of the benefits of this type of training can be, you can enjoy the same health benefits as constant moderate intensity exercise in a much shorter period of time. And I'll show you something that really fits that concept, right? And that's right here. This is from a study that was done, my goodness, now 12 years ago. But this was looking at this clustering of metabolic risk factors, right? Blood pressure and blood sugar control and insulin resistance and dyslipidemia. And with moderate physical activity, you can see that the increasing the amount of moderate physical activity, and this is the duration, the amount measured in minutes per week. The amount of moderate physical activity, as it increases, just like our health benefits curve, it decreases the percentage of, or the risk of metabolic syndrome. With vigorous physical activity, you can see that much less of a dose, right, has a much greater impact. The biological plausibility is nothing magic there. You're recruiting more muscle fibers. You're elevating blood pressure and heart rate to a greater extent. You might be expending more calories at a greater rate over a shorter period of time. But the idea here is that vigorous physical activity, you can enjoy the same, if not more, health benefits, right, with less vigorous physical activity than long, slow, continuous, moderate intensity exercise. That's good news. It's good news because most people will quit exercise or physical activity due to time. Okay, the bad news is that vigorous activity, as we saw before, might increase the risk of orthopedic injury. And one of the biggest reasons why people quit too is injury. So there's a balance there, right? Another type of physical activity or exercise that people neglect often is resistance training. And here you see a background picture of somebody lifting weights, but you don't have to do that. You can use bands, you can use your own body weight. You can actually you're in your chairs right now, you can sit and stand. That's a form of resistance exercise for your legs. You can lift, milk cartons or things of that nature. You don't have to buy expensive equipment to do resistance training. And resistance training is a different form of exercise that actually recruits more muscle fibers. There's slower movement in repetitions, less turnover, but it also induces some specific results, like increased muscle strength and endurance that you wouldn't ordinarily get from just walking or working on an ergometer like a stepper or a rower or a bike. And then you can enjoy some of the same benefits, overall general benefits, because much like medicine, there's side effects too, and there are some side effects from doing resistance training, just like there are with cardiovascular types of exercise modalities. We know that with resistance training, there is a better opportunity, a better chance of you improving bone mineral density than there is with cardiovascular types of exercise or exercises that improve cardiovascular fitness more so than resistance training. So there are different forms and different types of exercise that elicit very specific benefits. So let's look at this concept. Let's just revisit it, and then I'm going to open it up for some question and answers. So exercise is prescribed, much like medication, to address specific needs. There is a dose and there's an onset of action. There is a maximum effect, right? And there's a duration of effect that wears off. And so in order to enjoy this effect again, you have to repeat it over and over again. You can actually do too much, and above this threshold, you might cause injury or harm that was unintended. So there's this dose response. A little less exercise yields less of a response, and more yields a greater response. And there's a maximum effective dose. There are primary effects. In other words, you're exercising for a specific reason, it's very purposeful, and you're doing it for reasons that may be unique just to you. But there are also side effects or secondary effects, and these can be good. They can be beneficial. There are also some side effects that may not be so beneficial, but they may not be harmful either. For example, the effect of exercise may negate the effects of some of the medicines that you're taking. It may have a detrimental effect on some of the medications you're taking, or it might augment or improve the medications that you're taking. So it may have some interactions, right, that are unintended, and that's why it's important to monitor and manage all of the interventions that you're doing. Another important concept is that no two patients will respond the same, and that the same type of exercise might influence or affect two different individuals in a different way. Moreover, that same exercise might influence you in a different way after you've become accustomed to it. So exercise elicits adaptations, long-term adaptations over repeated dosages and repeated responses. And so we might have to change the intensity, duration, or frequency, or even volume in order to enjoy the same benefits or to enjoy continuous improvement. And the last concept is that for some individuals to get started, just some, there may be some contraindications. In other words, there might be some health conditions that you need to take care of before you embark or initiate physical activity. So it may be important to talk with your physician before you get started. But for most of us, we can get started with that low dose of physical activity or exercise today and enjoy health benefits. So I hope you enjoyed that brief overview of exercise as medicine, because indeed it is. And now I'd like to open it up for some questions, and hopefully I can provide a few answers.
Thank you so much, Dean Grandjean. I've already learned a lot. We have one question right now. It says, what exactly defines aerobic activity? A tennis friend of mine that goes out and just practices serves, her smartwatch is telling her that she is getting aerobic activity. She's kind of shocked because she isn't moving like a tennis match or walking.
Oh, that's a great question. So, um, if you if you're elevating your heart rate and you're elevating it, and when we say heart rate is an indicator, right? You're elevating your heart rate, and you can actually have something come across your screen. You're reading an email that elicits a big stress response, and your heart rate elevates, right? So, heart rate is just an indicator. But what constitutes aerobic activity is continuous activity with a high turnover of repetition, if you will. So in other words, if you're walking, you're stepping, and that's a high rate of repeating that kind of movement. That would constitute aerobic exercise. It's exercise at a level in which the oxygen that you're consuming can contribute to the energy that you need in order to do the exercise. And I hope that didn't get too lost in the woods, but the idea is the amount of energy that you have and you're able to provide the exercise can be done and contributed to from what we call aerobic means. If you do something like a sprint, for example, you're utilizing exercise utilizing energy at such a high rate that it's partially contributed to by your oxygen consumption, but you're taking up energy from other sources too. And you're going to have to stop that exercise or that exertion in order to recover. And you'll notice that you're breathing really hard. So the idea that you're tennis serving and your heart rate is up in a zone or a window that constitutes higher intensity means that you're elevating it and you're keeping it there for a little while. That serving is equivalent to those intervals that we were talking about before. And so you're enjoying some health benefits from that and some aerobic health benefits, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Um, Another question we have is, can exercise erase a bad diet?
That is a super question. And the answer is equivocal. I will tell you this right now that you don't want to practice a bad diet and exercise. Don't think that I can eat whatever I want and because I'm exercising. Again, we all respond differently. Let me just say why it's such a conflicting uh, answer here. That is because there are people that can eat just about whatever they want. And all of these health parameters that we're talking about are within normal limits and they appear very healthy. And quite frankly, don't cause any long term cardiovascular disease risk for some individuals. For others, just a little bit of a bad diet can really wreak havoc on our health. And to try and negate that with exercise is probably a bad idea, simply because exercise has some health benefits, but you may be countermanding the benefits of exercise through a bad diet. I have a whole health or whole set of slides talking about how we do this to ourselves all the time with a bad diet and how we cause deleterious health effects. So anyway, I'll leave it at this. That is not an easily answered question. I would say I would not um, bank on the fact that regularly practiced exercise is going to offset the effects of a bad diet. Rachel, I think your mic is off.
To stretch or not to stretch before or after exercising?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think that if you look at the literature, when you stretch, people think of it as static stretching, and static stretching actually can be detrimental to sport performance, if you will. And so, what a lot of people do is a warm up with what we call ballistic or dynamic stretching, and that is where you're warming up the muscle groups, and you're not necessarily in a static stretch or a pose, if you will, stretching and not moving. So static stretching before doesn't seem to improve sport performance, and it can be detrimental because our muscles and our tendons aren't warmed up, and you can actually stretch and maybe even tear those a little bit too. So a dynamic warm up is what is thought to be most beneficial prior to exercise, and then after exercise, once your body is heated up, warmed up, if you will, then some static stretching really helps. One last thing about stretching, and that is if you're doing resistance training, one of the best things you can do, not only to reduce the time of that exercise, but to improve and maintain range of motion, is to stretch between resistance sets.
Smart. Another question, Dean, what are your favorite ways to exercise?
Ha! I love this high intensity interval training. One of the things that I didn't mention was that when and high intensity interval training, you think, oh my goodness, we shouldn't use this in health, for health benefits or in patient populations. But high intensity interval training in cardiac rehab, obesity, and weight management in the clinical setting is used quite frequently because people enjoy it more than anything else. And the high intensity that we're talking about is high intensity relative to that person's individual fitness level, right? So for some people, high intensity might be walking. Others, it might be really sprinting or running. So going back to the question, my favorite is high intensity interval training because I can get the benefits from a workout in a shorter amount of time. That workout seems to go a lot faster, if you will, because I'm focusing on those intervals. And I just feel better after those. That's just me. I also enjoy a little bit of resistance training too, um, just because I'm getting a little older and I like to maintain my ability to walk upstairs without breathing too hard, or helping my wife move couches and rearrange the house, those kinds of things.
I love that. So here's another one. A great program. Thank you. I love rebounding and was intrigued by the use of this for NASA with astronauts. Can you share some thoughts on rebounding and benefits?
Great. Rebounding. So if you think about NASA and the astronauts, and this is quite intriguing. I've been actually to the exercise physiology lab in Houston, right, in the NASA facilities there in South Houston, and very intriguing the medicine and the medicinal concepts that have come from there. So what the NASA astronauts use for reacclimation to our atmosphere and gravity actually is exercise, treadmill walking in a pool. So it's a submerged treadmill in a pool. The water provides resistance to walking, right? Or jogging. The water also buoys up the astronaut's weight. And so you can be a little bit lighter and you can reduce the amount of water and the water level in the treadmill as you progress, and you can acclimate quite readily. The water and the resistance actually help somebody develop and regain some of the muscle mass that they lost in space. So I hope that's what you're after. If you look at rebounding here on Earth, because most of us haven't had the pleasure of being launched out into outer space. If you look at rebounding or recovery, um, underwater submersible treadmills, there are even positive pressure treadmills where they wrap a skirt around the lower half of the body and inflate that so that it's positive pressure, and it it can help with orthopedic injuries. It can help with weight management, weight control. So those forms of exercise are absolutely fantastic, much like it is for the astronauts for rebounding, if you will, or recovering or rehabilitation.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, great. So the another question we have is 10,000 steps a day trend. Um, how important is that?
That is a great question too. And 10,000 steps a day was an original concept. And it's a great concept, but very little science behind the 10,000 steps. In fact, if you look at the recent literature, you can enjoy tremendous health benefits with as little as 4 or 5,000 steps. So 10,000 was a threshold, it was a target that was a great concept that started kind of this movement, say, more modern movement of just getting out there and walking, right? Just accumulating some exercise throughout the day. It's a great concept, but 10,000 is not necessary for many people. Maybe 4,000 or 5,000 is out there for many people and many physical benefits. I think you're muted again, Rachel.
No, I think Rachel was just disconnected from her
Oh,
connection.
okay.
I'm checking to see if there's any more questions that have come in. I'm not seeing anything at the moment, but if anyone else has anything, please put it into the Q&A box if you'd like.
Thank you for picking that up
Yeah,
for me.
certainly.
Um, while people are perhaps writing some of the last questions, I'd like to show something too, because one thing that I think is critical is this focus, and we have an intense focus on trying to reduce weight.
We're gonna have to go back to what we used to do, where two people were.
We
Can
have
you
an
hear me
intent.
all?
I can hear you.
I apologize. Please keep talking.
Okay, what I was going to say is there's this intense focus at losing weight, and arguably, I think that there is increasing evidence to suggest that um, losing weight is probably the second hardest physiologic thing to do in terms of our overall health and well-being. So it's the second hardest. The hardest is actually keeping that weight off after we've lost it. And we do have, I think, as a major health issue, an increase in body weight and body fat that's causing a lot of these health problems. But even if we're unable to lose that weight, or even if we're struggling with that ability to keep the weight off, I want to show something that is um, the influence of being physically fit versus our body weight. What we see here are three different categories. We see normal weight individuals, overweight individuals, defined as having a BMI greater than 25, and then obese individuals defined as having a BMI greater than 30. And that's a body mass index, if you will. Body mass index is a ratio of weight to height. And if you look just at fit and unfit, these two bars in each of these categories, you're going to see that there is a reduction in all-cause mortality, the relative risk for all-cause mortality, tremendous reduction in all-cause mortality just by being fit versus unfit in normal weight individuals, overweight individuals, and obese individuals. The effect of being fit versus unfit is much more powerful, if you can see across these different groups, than being a non-smoker versus a smoker. So the strength of association is tremendous. And I just wanted to point that out. Even if you're having trouble losing weight, if your target is losing weight, I would say refocus on health benefits and just start doing something today and enjoying the health benefits on a daily basis.
Dean Grandjean, thank you so much for this. I want to apologize to everybody. I had a little bit of a technical glitch on my end. My computer froze, so I apologize for that. But I just want to say thank you, Dean Grandjean. I have found this extremely motivating. And I'm sorry, my camera is not working again, but it's good to know that just a little bit goes a long way. And if any of you have any questions or comments that you can think of after the fact, just shoot me an email. I'm at alumnioffice@mtsu.edu, and I'll make sure to get those to Dean Grandjean. Thank you all for joining us today. This webinar has been recorded. I'll be sending you a link to this recording in the coming days for your reference, along with a short survey. We welcome your feedback. We'd love to know what you enjoyed, or if we have any improvements we could make. You know, having a working camera would help, but we are always looking for new webinar topics as well. Please know you are invited to participate in our next webinar, which is February 26th at 11 a.m. It's called Building Your Personal Brand with Carla Fox. She is one of our professors in interactive media with the College of Media and Entertainment. Professor Fox teaches social media practices and holds workshops on branding for our students. So she'll be bringing that to our alums. So it should be a great session. Dean Grandjean, thanks again. And I hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.